I'm delighted to be joined by Owen Murphy, Senior Project Manager of the Breeding Waders EIP. Hi, Owen. Welcome, and thank you for joining me.
Good morning, Sarah. I'm glad to be here.
Could you tell me a little bit about the Breeding Waders EIP and the main issue that it's tackling?
We launched in May 2024. It is an ambitious 5-year project funded by the National Parks and Wildlife Service and the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. The issue that it's tackling is the serious decline of breeding wader species in Ireland over the last 50 years. So I suppose since the 1970s into the 1980s, Ireland would have had a very strong and solid, stable breeding wader population. Breeding waders are birds that nest on the ground. They associate with wetlands. And for various reasons, a lot of them to do with land use change. They are declining since that period in time. So this was identified a number of years ago by the National Parks and Wildlife Service and other ornithologists and ecologists. And I suppose the project is building on the back of some smaller localized projects and other projects such as the Breeding Curlew EIP that would have worked in this space previously. It's trying to coordinate a national effort to, I suppose, halt the decline and begin the process of restoring these populations back to something like they were in the 1980s. And what we'll try and do is implement changes on the ground, and that will be through management of privately owned farmland and non-privately owned farmland, so state or semi-state. We will work with, I suppose, any landowner that's willing to allow us to implement these management plans. And what you're trying to do is put in place measures that will protect these birds. The nest on the ground, so they're extremely vulnerable to any land use change. And that, for any people that I suppose work in the sector, land use change has been sweeping, I suppose, across Ireland. There are very few areas of Ireland that we haven't changed how we use land over the last 50 years.
And why then is this project considered an innovative project?
I suppose for a number of reasons. One is the scale. Ireland, as I said, has had small localized projects dealing with waders in specific areas. This is the first time we have a project that's well funded. It's a €25 million project, and that I suppose can take learnings from all those smaller projects and put them in scale that I suppose there's meaningful change for these birds on a national population level, not just on a local population. But there's other things that we're innovative in. Part of what we need to do is, in a lot of instances, we're working on privately owned farmland. So you're paying that farmer or that landowner to implement a management plan for these birds. So it's the farmers in a lot of instances are driving the change. They are implementing the measures on the ground that will affect these birds and that ultimately will change their fortunes. It's their productivity that is the problem. And what we mean by productivity is their ability to get eggs into chicks, into birds that can fly and be recruited back into the adult population. Our adult birds are surviving fairly well, in line with how they would have always survived. 80% or slightly more of adults that were on a breeding grounds one year will return to those breeding grounds the next year. It's the fact that they're producing no young. So the management fees and the management plans that we are putting in place will be wide-ranging and on a national level. On a smaller scale, as well as these management plans, nest protection is a hugely important part for these birds. They're on the ground, they're very vulnerable, so their eggs can be taken by multiple different predators, mammalian species and avian species. So we have a lot of innovation in that space as well, in regards to new techniques for removing predators from areas, for fencing off nests, either temporarily or from a permanent nature to exclude these predators.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks so much for sharing all that information. Just on that, are there any actions that people watching this interview can take themselves?
Yeah, there certainly are. We're in the process of establishing a couple of community science, citizen science initiatives. One of them will be the ability for people just to basically record if they've seen one of these species in the landscape. So that will be in the form of dropping a pin on a map. So if you're sitting at home in the evening and you think there's a curlew out in the field out the back, that you will have some way of recording it simply, and that would be onto the database. We'll be able to pick up on it from there. For people in the wider community to be able to record a species, that's very, very valuable for us. Certain times of the year, if somebody says, I have lapwing in such and such a place and it's the middle of the breeding season, we'll prick our ears and we'll say, well, this sounds like something we want to investigate. We are also in the process of planning an American mink eradication program. They're an invasive species. They're an American species, a beautiful species, I must say, but they do an awful lot of damage to our native wildlife. Our native wildlife aren't used to them. They have, no natural defenses to them. We will probably look at some stage for more formalized survey work in certain areas, and that will suit other groups as well. So if you have a Birdwatch Ireland branch in an area that has a lot of expertise, there may be members of that would actually like to, as opposed to the more casual reportings and the drop-ins, they may want to get involved in the survey work, and I mean, we'll be more than happy to have them. So look, there will be more information on those things as we move into the breeding season.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Sean.
No problem. Thank you, Sarah.